You could say she's like a prairie fire. You could say she's like a... Oh, you could say she's like a prairie fire. A soaring spirit riding on the flames of her desire. If you feel her burning in your soul tonight, prairie fire is the name you'll know her by. Look how you light the midnight sky. Prairie fire, tell us why.
Welcome to Prairie Fire. I'm Sarah Edwards. On this episode, I'll sit down with Allison Davis. Allison was the former host and producer of Prairie Fire for many years, so I thought it would be fun to get some stories from the road from her, and also we'll share one of her all-time favorite documentaries. Stay tuned later in our half hour for a performance from folk, roots, and Americana musician Chris Valillo. But first, Tanisha Spain has the story of a really fascinating guy who has come up with some innovative ways to enjoy gardening from the confines of his wheelchair.
I didn't talk yet. I wasn't even talking yet. One of my mom's parents, Eileen, she bent down and she showed me this flower and she goes, "Flower," and I said, "Flower" back. That was my very first word. Everyone was like, "Wow, you said it." And then my very first word is not mama or papa or anything easy. It was flower.
Tony Becker has always been fascinated with planting things.
My parents always had a garden as far as I can remember. I guess I watched them because I was about 6 or 7, and I guess I watched them plant. I went into the freezer and I grabbed me a bunch of beans, and I said, "These are seeds." Or I guess I thought these are seeds. I planted them in my mom's house plants, and then of course they start growing, and my parents come up to me and they call me into the room where the house plants are, and my mom's going, "What is this, Anthony? What is this?" Because my mom's Hungarian, so she has that accent. And so I'm like thinking I did something wrong. "This is very good, Anthony. You like to plant?" And they produced several beans. And I remember my parents, taking them and giving me, here's what you grew.
While other kids took fishing poles or flashlights to summer camp, Tony took seeds.
I was kind of mad that, I missed basically 8 weeks of messing with the garden while at camp. So I actually took the early tomatoes, and I actually, got them to be with the flowering and took them with me to camp, plus some radish seeds because I knew they would be done in a month. And I grew tomatoes and radishes at camp.
His love of gardening grew, and after serving in the Navy, he enrolled at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, to study crop sciences. Next up, grad school at the U of I.
On my way to my first final exam as a grad student, which was actually the first day I ever missed school, I rolled my truck and I broke my neck. December 98. I was going to go and study for another hour at school, and there was black ice, the ice you can't see, on the road in front of me. I couldn't see it because the sun was behind me. And the next thing I remember is about 2 weeks later, you're still kind of in the fog about what exactly happened.
Tony was now a quadriplegic.
It was weird. You have weird feelings when you're first aware. Everything's tingling a lot. It feels like your hands are going to sleep. Well, I wasn't fully aware that I wasn't going to ever move properly again until the doctor really put it on the table. And then I became very depressed, I guess, because I was no more garden. I've worked on my own car. I've replaced almost everything except for the motor and the transmission. And I started to realize I can't do any of that anymore. I also love to dance as well, so that was all gone. And so I was depressed for quite a while.
After months of therapy and learning how to live life a different way, Tony returned to school, earned his PhD in bioinformatics, and then got back into the garden.
But now I can take both hands, and if I'm really getting into stuff, I'm leaning down, and actually this is too short for this, but I'm leaning down and I'm really working into things.
Most garden tools are made for a standing person. So for the past several years, Tony has been modifying the tools he buys and making his own.
So some of the tools that I made just didn't work right, weren't very good, too bulky. The other thing is it's not, you'd think short tools would be better, but they're not. It's actually the longer tools that are better. The longer you can make it, and it has to be light, of course, if they're long, the better it is. You need a reach of at least a meter away from you in order to do any real significant gardening. So the challenges of using the garden tools gets less and less every year as I learn what works, what doesn't work, as my strength gets even better.
And it's that same strength that helped Tony find his way back to the garden.
So who is Tony Becker?
Someone who obviously had to overcome a major catastrophe in his life, but I've gotten much better at gardening, and even though it's not exactly how I want the landscaping, how I want things, I can still do it. I'm still able to do it with very minimal help from anyone else. And I'm going to still do it because keeping me active will also keep me more alive as well. So it'll always be my enjoyment till I can't pick up a tool anymore.
Before we go much further with the new Prairie Fire, I thought it would be a wise idea to get some perspective and stories from the longtime host of the original Prairie Fire, which aired from 1992 to 2008. Allison Davis was the producer and host for most of that time, and she sets a very high standard. She's won 7 Emmy Awards, and she's currently a lecturer of journalism at the University of Illinois. Allison Davis, thanks for joining us in Prairie Fire.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I really appreciate this.
No problem. Tell me a little bit about how Prairie Fire started and how your role kind of developed over time.
Well, Prairie Fire was started by Jeff Cunningham at WYLL TV, and he chose the name because of how when there is a prairie fire, it burns away the prairie grasses and exposes the roots. And we thought the show would really do the same thing, kind of helping us explore our deep roots in central Illinois and create new growth. And I was very lucky. After I graduated from college, I started working here part-time, and I became Jeff's production assistant. So we went on tours all over central Illinois, and it was just the two of us creating these programs. And I did that for about a year with him, and then he moved to Wisconsin, and I applied for his job, and that's when I took over as producer of the show.
So how did you take what he had done originally and kind of make it your own thing?
When Jeff and I were doing the show, our budget was really non-existent. So our plan was as far as we could drive in a day and get back, that was where we could go, because we couldn't really travel anywhere to do the show. And I
So I do have to emphasize,
yes,
it is a It is a very small crew of people doing this.
Very small crew of people, yes. At the beginning, it was just two of us. When I started doing the show, a lot of times it would be just me. I would go out and do the story. Later, I had Tim Harton was helping me with it, and that was really amazing because he is such a talented videographer and storyteller that he really helped push the production levels of the show, and also created some of my favorite shows, like a profile on recording artist Mark Rubel, and some other wonderful stories that Tim did. So we really, in the last years that I worked on the show, we really worked as a team on the productions.
How do you choose what to cover? I mean, what are the elements you're looking for in a good story?
Well, for me, I'm always looking for a great character, and I want someone that feels comfortable with me, and I work on that to make them feel comfortable with me. And I don't think they have to be a larger than life character, because I do think everybody has a story, and that's my job as a storyteller, is to be able to mine them for their story and to be able to present it in an informative and entertaining way. And also, of course, visuals. Some stories are lucky because everything falls into place. They're an artist or someone who has they're a really great personality, and then they also have incredible visuals. They're creating things that we can record. Historical pieces, always a lot harder to do because you don't have as many visuals to work with, and those require a lot more time.
Craziest stories from the road, wacky stories, unexpected events that happened to you while you were doing shoots, go.
Well, I will say one of probably the craziest stories we did was the World Freefall Convention up in Rantoul, which was a national convention for people that love to jump out of airplanes. So we went up to Rantoul, and it was a party scene with these people. They were free spirits, and it was like spring break for them. And I remember walking around shooting visuals, and my cameraman, Julius Bolton, at the time kept putting his camera down. And I said, "Why are you putting your camera down?" And he's like, "The women kept flashing me." So it was very challenging in that respect, but we did get some great B-roll. And then at the end of the day, the director said, would you like to jump out of an airplane? And I looked at him and immediately said, no. I had small children at the time, and I just couldn't imagine my husband at the time telling them, yes, your mother passed away jumping out of an airplane with a camera. So my cameraman, Julius, immediately jumped up and said, I will do it. So he did it. He jumped out of the airplane in a tandem jump, filmed the whole thing, and we used that in the story. So it was a really fun way to end the story.
Your favorite pieces of all time, name a few. And
yeah, one of my favorite pieces was on the Sangamon Ordnance Plant in Illiopolis, Illinois. And this was one of the largest manufacturers of ammunition during World War II. Most of it, all the workers were women, so it became very progressive. They had dormitory housing for the women that were working there. They even had childcare. I was able to talk to some of the former employees, and one thing they were telling me is how all of their hair turned red because of their exposure to the chemicals that they were working with all day. They all became these redheads. Another story that really inspired me was doing a story on demolition derby driver Tracy Neiman. When I met her, she's about my age, and I was blown away by her being one of the only female demolition derby drivers in this whole part of the state. And she was winning, she was really successful, she took it very seriously. We followed her around to the county fairs. I just remember the heat, you know, those hot county fair days, the noise. We had an old Chevy Suburban that we would drive around to film with, and I remember getting up on the roof of there trying to get shots of what was happening during the event and getting to immerse myself in this whole subculture that I really didn't know a lot about. And working in video, you know, is a really male profession, and I saw her in a very male world, and she was very competitive, and she had such a great attitude that she really inspired me.
Allison Davis, thank you so much for stopping by and giving us your stories and your history with Prairie Fire.
Thank you so much for having me, and great job with the show.
Thank you. And here, without further ado, is Allison's story about demo derby driver Tracy Neiman.
I don't know, I've always been a tomboy, daddy's little girl. Went fishing, hunting. Used to drive my grandmother nuts. I didn't want to wear a dress, didn't want to go shopping. I'd rather been with the guys. This is something I've done since I was little, and it's stuck with me all my life. Grandma still doesn't like it, but
It's part mud, part guts, and part insanity. And it's one of the most popular sports in the Midwest. The Demolition Derby has long been thought of as a man's world of crunching auto bodies and loud engines. But within this sea of masculinity is an island of pink.
I get a lot of static from a lot of people being the only girl out here. A lot of guys don't like it. Last year, after I won the Champaign County Fair, I manage an auto parts store, and the place next to us is like a quick lube oil change. And a guy come in there right away Saturday morning and was going on and on to the manager of the quick lube place about this girl won the Champaign County Fair last night, and that wasn't right. She should be home barefoot and pregnant. And that upset me. Told them if that guy ever come in there again to call me because I was coming over.
She's a good driver, real good driver. I was quite impressed the first time I saw her.
A lot of guys are out to get her just because she's a woman, but she's one of the best drivers I've ever seen. I think she deserves what she got championship last year. She needs to get it again this year.
Tracy spent the last 10 years racing, and before that she grew up around the track, watching her father Les, who's a 30-year veteran of the Demolition Derby.
That was the only thing she ever did listen at. Tell her to be home at midnight. She wouldn't show up till 3 in the morning, but when it come to work on cars, she was always there.
For the first couple years, when I was younger, Dad wouldn't let me run with the guys. I strictly stuck to the powder puffs, and after about 2 years of that, I got fed up with that. So I convinced him to let me drive with the guys, so he let me start at Ford County and Iroquois County fairs, because they're the smaller tracks and know a lot more people there. But now, like I said, I've been around this since I was a little kid. I know everybody that's at the racetrack. You get to the smaller county fairs and stuff, you know everybody, and it's kind of tough. I'd rather go out and race somewhere I didn't know anybody.
Make the decision, Tracy. It's your car.
Tracy's other mentor is former driver Scott Kelly. Scott now works with Tracy as her chief mechanic.
She's better than I ever thought about being. She's very intelligent. She makes the right decisions. She's not perfect, but she's not too bad. And she's the '93 Illinois State champion, so I think that speaks for itself. I was never skeptical because I could see the desire, and she was willing to put in the work, and the driving's the fun part, the being on center stage. It's the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of preparation that it takes to win, to build a championship car. She does get nervous, but I think that's more that her intensity's there because she wants to do well. I think she feels like she has an added burden on her shoulders being a female, but and I think she does. I think the burden is there, but I think that makes victory that much sweeter when you do it, because we play by their rules. There's no, you can run with the girls and then you can come and play with the boys. We run by the men's rules against the men with the same officials, and probably they're a little harder on her, the officials, so that they don't appear to show favoritism. And when she wins, that makes it that much better.
Scott has taught me you can do anything you want to do. All you gotta just put your mind to it. The year before last, it was an okay year. Like I said, I won the state championship and took third at the Hoosier Dome and stuff. But after coming here last year and getting demolished by my friends, we went to Crescent City. I did make it to the feature, but I had to fight all the guys from Crescent City up there, so my car was literally destroyed, and I was, kind of disappointed about that. It was nothing you could do about it. That's the name of racing. But went into Champaign, and Scott says, "I've got this feeling, Tracy, you can do it." And he says, don't think about it, just go out there and drive, and you can do it. And it's exactly what I did. I just kind of like blocked everything else out and just concentrated on what was happening out there on the track, and it helped.
Tracy and Scott say it takes a month to prepare a car for battle. Before the race, officials inspect each car to ensure that any modifications are within Derby guidelines.
We've got a 350 Chevrolet engine with 283 heads, which allow the engines to run cooler. We've got aluminum intake, which allows the engines to run cooler, and the exhaust up through the hood for two reasons. One, that makes it louder and the crowd likes it. Two, if she kills the engine, she can start it easier. We've got a radiator strapped in with rubber straps to keep it from moving, an extra large fan to keep it cool, and for safety we've got the engine mounts welded down solid so that the engine can't rock and lock the car with the accelerator down, and you could lose the brakes and get into the crowd. Then we've got 14-ply trailer tires on the front, which these are about 14 years old and been flat once. And on the rear we've got forklift tires that have been grooved with a Sawzall so they get extra traction. Then we've got a separate ignition system inside with the ignition not routed through the car at all. We've got our battery box inside. Our shifter only has 2 speeds. Pull it back to go forward, push it up to go reverse and neutral. And then we've got the fuel tank in the back. We've got a fuel cell out of a stock car which has a plastic bladder on the inside and an aluminum can on the outside with a rollover vent so that if she does get rolled over that no gas can run out on her. And then we've got 1 bar that's legal at this track to protect the gas tank. And that's basically what we do to prepare them, besides removing all the glass and anything else that can come out. Ours, we usually get 2 or 3 runs. We had one we had 8 runs out of last year, and we didn't win with it till the 7th time. So that's the longest, but it was only about 8 foot long and about 3 foot wide when we were finished.
Please try to stay off the driver's door. Looks like you're going to hit a door, put on the brakes and try to get it stopped. We'll go along with you. If we feel it's an intentional hit, you're out of here. We're not here to get no one hurt. If your car catches on fire, we have to put up the red flags to stop the show, bring the fire department out, put the fire out. It's over. We're not allowed to run you again. If you just backfire, something like that, and keep going, no problem. All right? You lose your brakes, for God's sake, shut it down, guys. This thing has always been real close here. I hate to see you get loose and get into a fence and hurt somebody.
As soon as I climb in the car, it's like I'm okay, everything's better. I just concentrate on different places to hit and stuff like that, and watching my front end and my back end of my car.
07, the first car in, Sean Schlickman. 5150, Barry Schlickman, followed by car number 4, Tracy Neiman. Tracy, I believe, is the only lady that's entered tonight, and she's done this before.
The object of a demolition derby is simple: keep driving. Derby drivers try to be one of the last 3 cars running in a heat. Then the winners of each heat compete in the feature or finals. At the Ford County Fair, Tracy is disappointed she doesn't make it to the feature.
The first couple years, I'll admit, they gave me a break. Now that I proved to them I could do it, there's no more breaks. Do have to fight harder. Another one of the reasons besides being a girl is, like I said, with my dad and Scott's reputation. I mean, they were very good drivers, and you know, they won a lot of the fairs, and it's just, you know, I'd like myself would like to do that, and people are gonna, you know, they've been beat up by my dad and Scott before, so they're not gonna let me beat them up. I've really got to fight a little bit harder.
But even when she doesn't win, Tracy leaves an impression with the Derby fans. Whether they like it or not, there is a woman on the track, and Tracy would like to see more.
I got a few little girls that follow me, and when they're old enough, they're gonna drive. And when I decide to have children, I hope I have a girl, because I want her to drive.
You can watch Allison's piece on the World Freefall Convention on our website. That's at will.illinois.edu/prairiefire. We end this episode with a tune or two from one of Illinois' real musical assets. Chris Valillo has been telling the stories of the people and the history of Illinois for more than 30 years with his guitar and his voice. His new album is called Forgotonia. Here's Chris Valillo.
In 1972, 16 counties in west central Illinois banded together to form the independent nation of Forgotonia, secede from the Union, declare war on the United States, and then immediately surrender and apply for foreign aid. It was all just political theater to protest the lack of federal dollars coming into West Central Illinois. But to everyone's amazement, it worked. 4 years later, I moved down there as an archaeologist on federal money, doing the first highway project going through the section of our state. It was like walking back in time 40 years, and it just enchanted me. This song was trying to capture that before it all disappeared. Little town news, rusty old horseshoes, hanging up above the weathered door. Old maple trees, a sultry summer breeze, waltzing across the summer kitchen floor. Down on the town square, all the kids are hanging round, swapping lies and sneaking their first beers. When the sun goes down, they'll be heading out of town. They're gonna spin those tires, bang those gears. Noon promenade of old men in the shade, spitting out tobacco on the ground. Battered decoy ducks hang from rusted pickup trucks by the bandstand in the middle of the town. And up at the cafe, you can catch the latest news. Who left who and how the crops are doing. Randy wrecked his truck, that boy always had bad luck. Mary says the sweet corn's coming in real soon. Sometimes you can hear it just beyond the failing light. The echoes of the past come back to call, like some old fiddler's tune heard beneath the harvest moon, the one that haunts your mind but you can't quite recall. Oh, little town blues, rusty old horseshoes, hanging up above the weathered door. Old maple trees, a sultry summer breeze, waltzing across the summer kitchen